I want you to just close your eyes for a second.
Yeah.
And imagine the moment you feel most connected to other people. What does that look like?
Mm-hmm.
For most of us, I'm guessing it's loud. It's the roar of a stadium, when the home team scores.
That last-minute goal, yeah.
Or a huge protest with everyone chanting in unison.
Mm-hmm.
Or, a concert where 20,000 people are singing the same words.
It creates this visceral vibration in your chest, doesn't it? We tend to equate that volume with validity.
Exactly. It's not loud if it's not shaking the ground. We just assume it's not real unity. High energy equals being together.
Right.
But today, we're going to dive into a stack of documents that just completely dismantles that idea. We're looking at reflective humanism, and specifically at these two dense but really fascinating sources, V1.4 on core fields and a thesis labeled No.37.
And the premise is a pretty significant twist. The source material suggests that true synchronization, the kind that's stable, the kind that's actually healthy, it doesn't happen at that peak of emotion.
Not in the stadium.
No. It happens in the silence after all that emotion dissolves.
That is so counterintuitive. It almost feels, I don't know, a little disappointing. So we're here to understand natural resonance and core fields. And reading this, it felt like I was being asked to stop explaining the world and start just observing its structure. But I have to ask, if you take the emotion out, isn't it just boring?
Well, that's the fear, isn't it? That if we take away the high, we're just robots. But the sources argue we're just looking at the wrong map. We need to shift from content, what we're all shouting about, to structure.
To how we're relating.
Exactly. So for the next 15 minutes or so, I'd invite you to just drop your assumptions about empathy, about emotional bonding. We need to look at the geometry of connection itself.
Okay, let's start with that status quo. Why is collective consciousness always framed so emotionally? The sources talk about crowd enthusiasm and fear-based unity. We're just conditioned to think that if we're not all cheering or crying together, then we're not really connected.
Because it's visible.
Yeah.
And it's contagious. If you look at source N37, it analyzes this very thing. It argues that these emotional peaks, whether it's fear of an enemy or, wild enthusiasm for a cause, are inherently unstable.
Unstable.
Yes. The text uses the term interference, or the Japanese term kancho. And when we bond through that kind of high emotion, the source says it's often more of a collision than a resonance.
A collision. That's such a violent word for something we call unity.
Well, think about it physically. High emotion takes a huge amount of energy to sustain. It creates what the text calls a high gradient, a really steep difference between being calm and being excited.
Right.
And to keep that unity going, you need a constant external stimulus. The game has to keep going, the music needs to get louder, or the threat needs to keep looming over you.
Okay, I think I see where this is going. It's like a sugar rush. You get this huge spike of energy, everyone feels amazing, but then what happens when the sugar runs out?
You crash, exactly. The source really questions if that can even be called stable synchronization. It's totally reliant on a shock to the system.
And once the event is over.
Once that gradient flattens out, everyone just goes back to their own separate, isolated worlds. There's been no real structural change, just a temporary emotional overlay. True collective consciousness, according to this, shouldn't need a constant shock to keep it going.
It's the Monday morning hangover of social movements. That feeling is just gone. Which brings us to a concept in the V1.4 document that I found. Really striking and honestly a little tough to wrap my head around: discontinuous generation.
Yes, and this is where the text moves from a sociology into almost a physics of psychology. This is where we get into the definition of pain.
And this just stopped me cold, because normally when we talk about pain, we mean suffering, a tragedy, an injury. But this material defines pain as a rebound effect.
It's a systemic reaction. So imagine you're driving a car down the highway, maybe 60 miles an hour.
Okay, cruising along.
Now imagine you try to just slam the gear stick into reverse without slowing down.
Oh, you're going to destroy the transmission. It's going to make this awful sound.
That grinding sound, that heat, that is what the source calls transparent pain. So in this philosophy, pain isn't just an emotion, it's a sign of a system trying to update itself way too fast.
It's a collision of phases.
Precisely. When we try to force a connection with someone on a completely different path, or when we try to force the world into a neat little box of good versus bad, what the text calls points or evaluations, we create these incredibly steep slopes.
And climbing a steep slope takes a ton of energy.
And slipping down, it causes damage. This leads to what the source calls transparent pain. It's this friction between the outside world and our internal operating system. When we try to force synchronization with high emotion or rigid judgment, we're basically just grinding the gears of our own mind.
So pain is actually a system error, like a notification saying we're forcing something that just doesn't fit.
That's a great way to put it. It's a sign of a high gradient. We're trying to climb a vertical wall of difference instead of just finding a gentle ramp. We're not flowing, we're colliding.
Transparent pain. It's that
Yeah.
that background hum of anxiety you feel when you're trying too hard.
Mhm.
So let's pause here for a second. If high emotion results in this heat and pain and these loud connections are unstable, what's the alternative? Because if you just say feel nothing, I'm not buying it.
And that is the pivotal question. The source material proposes moving from impact, the collision, to flow, and this leads us to the hypothesis of structural synchronization.
And the sources make this huge distinction here between conformity and phase alignment. I think
Oh.
this is where people can get tripped up, so I really want to drill down on this.
It is the core distinction of the entire philosophy, really. Conformity is emotional. It's demanding we all feel the exact same thing at the exact same time. That's the stadium. Phase alignment or structural synchronization is something completely different.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate. If you strip away the emotion, if you take away that roaring stadium feeling, are we just left with something cold? I mean, are we just turning into robots who align vectors?
It does sound a bit robotic on paper, I'll give you that. Aligning vectors. But the source argues that the roaring stadium feeling is actually kind of cheap. It's easy. It's a shortcut.
A shortcut to what?
A shortcut to feeling connected without doing the work of actually understanding the structure. Phase alignment doesn't mean we have to agree. It doesn't even mean we have to feel the same emotion.
Yeah.
Natural resonance implies that our vectors, our directions, and our orbits, our processes, they align. We stop looking at points, which are, fixed opinions.
Your final conclusion.
Right. And instead, we look at trajectories. Where is this thought going?
Oh, I love that shift. It's not about what is your stance right now. It's what's the direction you're moving in. It's like traffic on a highway. We don't all have to be listening to the same music, but we do need to agree on the lane markers so we don't crash.
That's a perfect analogy. There's a dialogue example adapted from the configuration files that puts it really well. You might ask, so does phase alignment mean we all share the same feeling at the same time?
Right.
And the answer from the material is rather the opposite. It appears after the emotional pressure dissolves. It's a structural symmetry point.
And this ties into that spiral concept from RHV 1.4, right? This was a bit abstract for me, so could you unpack it?
Spiral is crucial, yeah. Because if you see time as a straight line, then differences of opinion just look like a tug of war. I'm pulling this way, you're pulling that way.
A collision.
Exactly. But if you see time as a recursive loop, a spiral, then we can be at different points on that loop but still be moving in the same harmonic motion. Our spirals turn in harmony without crashing.
So we don't have to be in the same spot to be in the same rhythm.
You don't. And that's such a relieving thought, isn't it?
It takes so much pressure off. I don't need to convince you to stand exactly where I'm standing. I just need to align our rhythm so we aren't colliding.
And that alignment happens best in the quiet.
Let's go deeper on that.
Yeah.
This is block 4 of our deep dive. The symmetry point of natural resonance. Source No.37 talks about a near-zero gradient.
This is where the text gets almost meditative. A near-zero gradient is that state where the urge to assert just drops away. You stop trying to evaluate everything as right or wrong. You stop projecting your ego. The source describes it as a state where meaning is not forced, only phase is aligned.
It calls this transparent interference, which sounds like another paradox. How can interference be transparent?
It means we're affecting each other, but we're not obstructing each other. We're passing through one another like light waves that harmonize instead of crashing. And in this state, we become what the source calls observers, or konshusha. We become transparent to one another.
There's a triad in Source V1.4 that maps this out. It uses words we know, love, gratitude, spiral. But the definitions are, well, they're not what you'd see on a greeting card. They're very technical.
Very technical. It redefines them as structural components. First, love is defined as the 0 point. It's not an emotion here. It is the probability of being with others. It's the fundamental condition that allows connection to even happen.
So love isn't a feeling of warmth. It's the possibility of connection.
It's the canvas, yes.
Right.
Then you have gratitude. In the source, gratitude is the vector. It's the direction that keeps the connection going forward in time.
Okay.
And finally, the spiral. That is the phase. It represents the continuation of the relationship. So love is the starting point, gratitude is the direction, and the spiral is the flow.
And none of those require you to be shouting.
In fact, they require the opposite. Why does true synchronization appear in quiet states? Because in silence, we stop projecting. We stop forcing ourselves onto the other. We allow the phase to align naturally.
It's interesting. We usually think of silence as emptiness, an awkward silence. But here, silence is an active structural state where the real work happens. But, and here's the pivot for me, we live in a world that is anything but silent. Right now, transparent interference sounds lovely, but I look at my phone and I see the exact opposite. I see algorithms designed to make us collide.
You see the high gradient. And that brings us to the section on AI and institutional design.
Yeah, I see rage bait. Look at what this person said. I see systems designed to make me feel intense emotion instantly.
And that is exactly what the source material is critiquing. It argues that current technology is designed to maximize heat. It wants that friction because friction generates data. It amplifies emotion to keep you engaged.
So is the source proposing an alternative? Because it feels like we're just stuck with this.
It proposes a pretty radical one. The reflective humanism vision for AI describes it as atmosphere, or a health scan mode. The text calls it Kenshin mode.
AI is atmosphere.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful image, but what does that actually mean?
Well, think about the air in this room right now. You don't really notice it, do you? It doesn't grab you and scream at you. It just supports you. It regulates temperature. The source suggests AI should act like a smart thermostat for your cognitive bias.
So instead of feeding me content that makes me angry just to keep me scrolling,
it would just reflect your own position back to you. It would say, here is where you are standing. Here is your blind spot. Not to judge you.
but just help me navigate.
Exactly. To help you maintain what it calls cognitive homeostasis. It's the difference between a tool that wants to engage you, which usually means hooking you, and a tool that wants to help you coexist.
It creates kind of quiet ethics.
Yes. The source material envisions a society designed not for engagement, which implies friction, but for coexistence, for resonance. The goal is non-interference. The phrase it uses is touch without touching too much.
Touch without touching too much. That sounds like a design principle for a much saner internet. It suggests we need institutions that help us stabilize, not radicalize. We need systems that help us lower the gradient, cool the heat, and find that alignment.
It's a vision where technology helps us become more human by giving us the space to be quiet instead of constantly filling that silence with more noise.
So to recap the journey we've been on, we started with the heat of the emotional crowds. That loud, unstable unity that feels great but just crashes.
We move through the pain of forcing connections, the collisions of high gradients. We realized pain isn't just suffering, it's the sound of shifting gears too fast.
And we explored the idea that true connection is structural. It's about phase alignment, not emotional conformity, aligning our trajectories, not just our opinions.
And we landed on that symmetry point, that quiet state where love, gratitude, and the spiral are a geometry of connection, not just feelings. And finally, how AI could be the atmosphere that supports this, rather than the storm that disrupts it.
It's a lot to take in, but it feels calming. It feels like permission to turn down the volume. So I want to end with a question that comes verbatim from the configuration files. I'll ask you, can we connect through phase rather than emotion?
If so, social design might change quietly.
Social design might change quietly. That is a powerful sentiment. And I want to leave you, the listener, with one final concept to mull over today. It's the idea of transparent pain. As you go about your day, just pay attention to that friction in your own mind, that little buzz of anxiety or resistance when you read a headline or disagree with a friend, and instead of trying to fight it, just observe it. Is that friction a problem? Or is it maybe just a sign that your internal operating system is trying to update its phase? Maybe that pain is just the sound of you getting ready to align with a new trajectory.
It brings us back to that phrase from the end of the text, the rationality of absence. Sometimes what isn't there, the noise, the force, the ego, is more important than what is.
Thanks for diving deep with us.